A lot of the reasons why we wanted to start this company was because of these kind of promises we'd be made as teenagers growing up and playing games were on the back of the box. It told about massive living world, sort of true persistence. And we were asking ourselves, like, why aren't we playing games which have like large living worlds? Why are we playing games which only have 32, 64, 100 players in them? Why are we not inside game worlds that have, thousands or tens of thousands of AI interacting in the environment? Why aren't we in an environment where the trees actually grow, there's a real ecology, there's a real economy? And we actually dove into it, and besides it being kind of like a gameplay reasons and gameplay difficulties to that, there's also technical difficulties. There's fundamental technical issues why that couldn't be done. And we realized it was because of this kind of compute limit. It was this idea that people were trying to cram the entire game world onto a single server rather than using lots of servers and having them cooperate together. And then we realized it was kind of worthy of an entire company's mission to build technology to let game devs use the power of more than one computer inside the same game world. I guess the way I describe it is a traditional kind of game you connect to, so be it like your classic like arena game, battle royale game, you're connecting into a single computer which is running somewhere kind of in the cloud or on a data center. And SpatialOS's idea is you still keep that kind of core server which runs there, responsible for kind of a part of the world, but rather than it simulating the entire world, we chop up into different areas of space. This is kind of why we call it SpatialOS. So each server is actually simulating a different part of the world. And as you move around as a player, you're actually moving seamlessly from server to server. So that's kind of some of the interesting things. And the thing as well is as you're actually moving around the world as well, you're not seeing data just from one server, you're seeing data from different servers all stitched together to form a seamless environment. So if I'm looking at somebody a couple of miles away through some binoculars, they might be actually on a different server, but SpatialOS is about stitching them all together. Mavericks is trying to unify together a lot of different other kind of pillars of gameplay we think we can change with SpatialOS. So the first one is scale. So it's this idea of going beyond that kind of 100 player limit you find in traditional arena-based games today, and they're kind of like they're smashing that out of the park with some of the game modes they have in mind. I think the second one is kind of increasing the fidelity of the world. So rather than just making it larger and kind of having to thin it out as a result, they want to have fast-paced, twitchy gunplay. They want to have sort of very like sort of high fidelity physical and destruction effects. That type of stuff as well requires you to have far more compute on the back end to kind of make that possible. And the final one's really persistence. It's this idea of having game worlds which have lasting consequences. The fact that you can have footprints which kind of actually last in the ground as you run around, or when you kind of destroy a building in the environment, it can persist for an arbitrary long amount of time. Again, that requires technology like Spatial to make that happen. The first thing you need to really tackle an ambitious game is to have an ambitious team. And James and the team really are that. They're people who really have a shared vision with kind of the future of games and what we want to see. And there's a really nice combined team effort going on here. So, they're bringing to bear deep expertise in CryEngine, both on the rendering client side and on the server side. And we're able to unify that with our kind of distributed networking expertise with SpatialOS to be able to make like sort of a fantastic group to go and tackle this problem and make fantastic game experiences. I'm Rob Whitehead and I'm CTO at Improbable.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm pretty happy.
Nice.
Yeah.
So imagine you're diving in from the sky and you look around and you can see all of these players diving in with you. And you look down and you can see this giant world just slowly loading in front of you. You're getting closer and closer and you can see just about where you're about to land, and you can see there's a bunch of trees. And you end up accidentally landing inside these trees. You can see all these branches falling around you. And you look around and you can see, oh, there's some other people who have done the same thing, and you can see exactly whereabouts they've come into the world. So you decide just to start to follow them. Systems like these give a really tactical sense of gameplay in Mavericks, because you can also think about, oh, I'm following this person, I need to follow the impact they've had on the current world, but as well as being mindful of what you've done and the impact you've had. You can turn around and you can see your footsteps trailing behind you, or you can see the grass bending in particular ways. In order to be able to simulate all of this, it's quite a computationally complex thing to do for every single player on the map. We could theoretically render this on one server, however, that's when you start getting things like your FPS tanking, and it ends for a not very pleasant gameplay experience. So what we do is instead we use SpatialOS to be able to take this load, distribute it across multiple servers, and then stitch this back together in what allows us to only give to the player to render exactly what they need to know instead of having details of the entire world. One of the bigger challenges was making this sort of game is, what happens when all of these people come into one area. One of the things we're going to have to do in development is to do a lot of stress testing and scale testing in order to understand how SpatialOS is going to scale up and down to deal with this issue. For example, we can just go and have a system that connects directly into SpatialOS and just spawns 1,000 players for us right there, and then just has very basic control of them walking around and shooting. It gives us a great sense of how our systems are reacting directly to computing all of the things the whole system needs to. Not only does this help us with our stress testing, we can also use this in our day-to-day development. I can easily just from one client spawn in like 5 or 10 different people and then quickly switch between those and position them however I need to be able to develop features on a much faster basis than having to load up 10 different game clients and run them all separately, which then allows us to profile and target different areas for us to be able to best understand where to focus our efforts when it comes to optimizing the game. Growing up, I've always been someone who's played a lot of MMOs, and I feel that in recent years it's an area that's been lacking. One of the core things that Automaton wants to do is to be able to build the great next generation of MMOs. Like, they're really interested in the idea of being able to take something as intense as Battle Royale and then merging that with the sense of earning something through playing an MMO. We're still in a place now where lots of the stuff we're using is, placeholder and isn't actually going to be in the final game. Like, we have these iterative builds and just speed at which things manage to come together and seeing the work that every single department that we work with has put in to just make this one cohesive product, even though a lot of it is still, placeholder and it's a pre-alpha build. It's just every build you put together, you're getting something new. You're not just getting what you've worked on, you're getting what everyone else has worked on. There's new art being pulled in, new animations, there's like new gameplay features from other people in the development team, and just being able to have that iterative development and change is like really exciting, because it can go from one week looking like white boxes everywhere to the next week like, oh, this is actually beginning to take shape, and be able to see something that you've contributed to, and it's like, oh, I made something in that, and it's just interesting to see the first play tests going on in the office and just watching everyone having like fun enjoying something that they've made.